Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
What's up, y'all? You're listening to the latest episode of the Tigers Podcast. I'm Frank Bonin. I'm joined by my guy, Stephen Johnson, as always. We've got a lot to get into with the recent cancellations of the men's basketball games. But before we get into all that, we want to make sure you don't forget to check out our podcast, our other podcast. Jennifer Biggs hosts Soundbites. Eric Barnes hosts The Sidebar. And, of course, Chris Harrington and Drew Hill have got you covered with the Grizzlies podcast every week. You can find all of these podcasts anywhere you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and dailymemphian.com. So, Stephen, what happened going into that Tennessee game?
Well, I remember I walked into the stadium, me and Jeff Calkins, our columnist colleague. As soon as we got through, we're going to go down to the media room, probably get something to eat. We get the message from Memphis that the game has been canceled. And as time progressed over the weekend, we found out that Tyler Harris and Landers Nolley were the two guys that tested positive, and that Memphis was down to 4 players available. So I had some people trying to do some math because they said Memphis basically had to consider their red shirts and the guys that were injured in terms of available players. So they have 3 guys that are red shirted. They had 2 guys that were injured, Earl Timberlake and Chandler Lawson. And Jaden Hardaway didn't make the trip up there. So in total, they had 8 guys that were out either with a positive test, walk-on, or injury-related. I think there are 17, 18 guys on the roster. So, and of course, due to AAC rules, the unvaccinated players were ruled out because of contact tracing. So all in all, it was a cluster, you know what. It wasn't necessarily a great look. Penny kind of coming out afterwards saying that when he told us that the Tigers were 90% vaccinated in the preseason, that he had quote unquote misspoke, and that he had kind of just talked about it in the preseason and didn't talk about it again. So I think overall it just wasn't. It was disappointing for the fans, for the media, for everybody, and I think it was especially disappointing for Penny Hardaway and the rest of the players as well too.
You know, I was trying to wrap my mind around, the whole 90% thing. Usually I would assume that if a coach tells you we're 80% or 90% vaccinated or so on, it's because he knows the exact number of players who are vaccinated, who is and who isn't. And so how do you misspeak in a situation like that if you don't really know these are the exact players who have gotten the shot?
I think it was either a case of maybe Penny knew that their numbers weren't where they needed to be when at that point when he spoke to us, and maybe he didn't want the players, or he didn't want himself to kind of come under scrutiny from, you guys only have half the team vaccinated, or nine out of 17 guys vaccinated. That's a low threshold. So that's what I'm thinking. And like I said, he told us that he just never really thought about it, and I think that's concerning, especially. Okay, let's say from September, I don't know if Omicron was really as big of a threat. I think we thought it was kind of maybe just the latest variant. But as those cases have increased and we've seen more cancellations over this last month and a half, I think you will like to see your coach be more proactive in having those conversations. And now it looks like the university is, in a statement they sent to us, they said, they held an informational on Sunday, and they're going to hold some more. So now it seems like Penny and the rest of the program is being more proactive and kind of just educating these guys, kind of trying to show them the benefits of the vaccine, whether it be having more mild symptoms or just being able to play if somebody tests positive on the team. So it wasn't a good look for Penny, whether you think it's a big deal or a small deal, but let's be real. He lied. His reasonings He lied. Whether it was to protect himself or the players, at the end of the day, it was a lie. So, that's never a great look either way.
Yeah, and I hate to have this conversation surrounding Penny Hardaway just, because of what he's done for the city as a player and so on. But looking at how he handled the locker room situation with, guys not being together and that whole debacle when they were losing the game, and then looking at how he's handled this COVID situation, beyond his recruiting and beyond the X's and O's, is there an issue of Penny Hardaway not being able to manage the locker room?
I think that's a fair question. And honestly, his X's and O's are, even after the big win against Alabama, I think it's still fair to have some questions about those. But in terms of those other two factors, in college, it's not just about X's and O's and landing players. You're a leader of men. You are an ambassador to the university. So I think Penny has had some shortcomings in that area just from the way he was describing the locker room. That's chemistry is one thing, but it sounded like the team just had beef with each other. And I think that's an indictment on you, because he talks about culture, but the culture is set by the coaches and then on down to the players. So whatever happened, maybe he's gotten things right after that 4-game losing streak in terms of chemistry, but I definitely think that was something that you got to hold against him. And his COVID situation, look, he's right. You can't force anybody to do anything. There's no mandates or anything like that. But a lot of these teams across the country, Kentucky's fully vaccinated and boosted. Tennessee, they came out and said they had 15 to 17 guys vaccinated, and including all of their rotation and starters. So I think Ohio State's another team I know is either fully vaccinated or close to it. So there are ways to go about it where you can respect people's right to have a choice, while also being mindful of this is a team sport. This is something we're being competitive at. And if not enough players on the team are vaccinated, that's a competitive disadvantage, especially if you're facing a team that's fully vaccinated going forward. So fully vaccinated and fully boosted with this new strain of COVID. So there have definitely been some shortcomings on his end, on and off the court, which is something he's going to have to kind of deal with as we kind of move into 2022.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of drama about this Tennessee game, whether it's going to be post or rescheduled or not. It sounds like the Memphis side wants to reschedule it. Tennessee doesn't. Do you foresee this just being a flat-out cancellation, or do you think there's a chance that it could pop up on a schedule somewhere?
I will be highly skeptical. The first step for Memphis, if they even want to think about scheduling that game, they're going to have to be more upfront and more forthcoming with how many players on the team are vaccinated. Like I said, Tennessee says they have 15 and 17 guys vaccinated, and they also said it would be irresponsible to play a team that has a bunch of unvaccinated players. Like I said in the statement, the school said the majority of the roster is vaccinated, but what exactly does that mean? Like I said, you got 17, 18 guys on the roster, so technically you could have 8 or 9 guys vaxxed, but that still leaves a large chunk of your roster unvaccinated. So until they correct that, I think it's going to be hard for Memphis not only to reschedule with Tennessee, but to convince any team to kind of, especially a quad 1 level team, to convince any one of those type of teams to put them on the schedule. And that's, like I said, that's something Penny's going to have to deal with. We know they want to give at least one more quad 1 opportunity outside of facing Houston, but I think until they get their vaccination status in order, that's going to be difficult for them.
And I know we may not be able to know this, but I do think that which players are vaccinated is important. If the majority of your vaccinated players are the guys who are at the end of the rotation, then, it's a lot different if you're starting 5 or something like that are the ones, not vaccinated. So I guess teams have to, protect their own programs outside of that. But how much do you think, assuming that Memphis, had a chance to win this game, looking at the risk reward of winning or losing this game against Tennessee, how much does the cancellation affect their tournament chances?
Well, the latest bracketology that came out from Joe Lunardi at ESPN, he's one of the top guys in this game that's been doing it. Memphis, he released it on Friday before the game was canceled, and Memphis was basically a bubble team, first 4 out. I think they were the second team out. So obviously, a win would have probably put them squarely in as an at-large, and like I said, it would have been enough to offset some of those bad losses to Georgia. I'm not sure. Ole Miss probably might end up being a less than ideal loss as well too. That would have given them 3 quad 1 wins, and there are only a handful of teams in the country that have as many quad 1 wins right now. So it was a huge opportunity, kind of missed out, and I think it puts a lot more. It puts some more pressure on them in conference play. Now I think you have to beat Houston at least once. I think you've kind of used up all your mulligans in terms of taking bad losses. I don't think you can take one to Tulane, South Florida, Tulsa, whoever else is on the schedule. So I think, Memphis isn't in the most ideal situation, but right now they're probably in the at-large bubble team, kind of near the bottom. As long as they handle their business in conference play, obviously winning the conference will help a lot. But like I said, you beat Houston, you beat Wichita. You don't take any, you don't take any upset losses. I think Memphis will be in the tournament, but obviously beating Tennessee would have been huge for their resume and probably giving them a lot more peace of mind going into AAC play.
Now, the tournament or the program is expected to be back rolling after Christmas break, and their next game, as of right now, is December 29th at Tulane. Do you think there'll be any residual rust of not being able to practice and so on going into that game?
I honestly think so, just because it will be if that game is played. Because as of this morning, I haven't checked since then. Tulane is still in the pause as well too, and they've been on one a lot longer than Memphis. So it seems like their issues may even be a little bit more dire than what the Tigers are dealing with. So, and if that game is canceled or postponed or whatever it may be, your next one will be against Wichita State at Wichita on New Year's Day, which was always going to be a tough game, and that's going to be even tougher if you haven't played in 2+ weeks. So I think there could be some rust, not being able to practice and things like that. And like I said, they last game was December 14th. So there's a lot going on. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do play a Tulane. They start off a little bit slow, just rust, not having practice play the game. So I think you could. I don't think the rust should be enough for them to lose that game if it takes place, but I would not be surprised at all to see like a slow start by Memphis.
Well, I think the main concern right now is getting that team healthy and hopefully getting some more of those guys vaccinated. Switching over to football, final game of the season, Hawai'i Bowl against Hawaii. One of the underlying storylines is the head coach and the starting quarterback are going against familiar foes. Silverfield was under Todd Graham over at Arizona State, and so they've got a nice relationship. And then with the starting quarterback in Hawaii transformed, Braden, the true freshman, has moved to starting role, who just played Seth Hennigan in the Texas playoff high school in January. So they've got a relationship. So, a couple of familiar foes going at it. Should be a good game. Depth chart wise, obviously no Calvin Austin. Eddie Lewis has been moved in that position. No Braden Thomas on the depth chart. He's missed 3 of the last 4 games. You've got Rodriguez Clark in that position. Obviously, Asa Martin's kind of been the main back, especially in the passing game. So those are just some of the, I guess, wrinkles of personnel that you can see in the Hawai'i Bowl.
So for the Hawai'i Bowl in general, what kind of stands out to you, obviously, besides some of the personal ties the staff and the players have with Memphis? What else stands out to you about this Hawaii team?
We talked about it before. Just their defensively, their knack at being able to hawk on the ball. They're one of the top teams in the country in turnovers, and Memphis has had its struggles in turnovers. So that's obviously going to be a key factor, and especially when they've got a quarterback who isn't the usual starter. This Hawaii team is probably going to lean more on their defense to try to make some plays. And then I know they lost their top running back, but they were kind of a 1-2 punch in their running back situation anyway. So they still have a quality running back on that offense. And so I think I wouldn't be surprised to see Hawaii kind of lean more on the run and on their defense, knowing that they have a freshman quarterback. And it isn't a quarterback like Seth Hennigan, who's a true freshman, but he's been the starter all year. This is a different situation. So Hawaii will be more of a run offense in this game and kind of play more of a field position type of deal.
What's your confidence level in the Memphis offense? We know how much Calvin Austin has meant, especially in the passing game and some of the other ways he kind of just create space for the Tigers. He's not playing. What do you think the offense will look like from a production standpoint?
Man, to be honest with you, the confidence level in this offense is not extremely high. Just looking at what they've done in some of these previous games, Asa Martin, I think Asa Martin is going to be the key. He was the key against Tulane, not just running the ball, but using him as an additional pass catcher, especially with Calvin Austin now. So expect to see them using Asa Martin in the pass game pretty heavily. And then obviously you've got Sean Dykes there, who is no stranger to being used as a tight end. We'll see if Eddie Lewis can kind of elevate his game as he's done in some games past. But I'm expecting to see Asa Martin have at least about 4 or 5 catches in this game.
Defensively, I think for a lot of people, they still kind of see Hawaii or still even think of Hawaii as some of those other teams that throw it around a lot. Obviously, it seems like they're dealing with a lot of adversity. What type of statement can the Memphis defense make, or what type of statement should they make, considering that it looks like Hawaii isn't going to be 100% on offense either?
I think this is a game that they can make a big statement. I mean, like I just said, you're going up against a freshman quarterback who has played this season, but he isn't the usual starter. And so you're going up against an offense who, for one, is prone in turning the ball over. They're near the bottom of the country in turnovers. And so you're going to have opportunities to get some takeaways. And then you can put this freshman quarterback in positions that can make him make some bad decisions. And so I think with Mike McIntyre leaving, there are probably a lot of people who expect this defense to come out flat with that whole situation. But if you're in that locker room, if you're J.J. Russell, if you're Quindell Johnson, if you're Jacoby Francis, you expect to come out here and show fans that even with the loss of the defensive coordinator, you can still come out here and get the job done in the same way that they've done in some games towards the end of the regular season.
And I guess kind of just looking towards the future, so we kind of talked about the game a little bit this week and last week. With a defensive coordinator, what type of coach do you think Silverfield should look for? Should he try to find a young up-and-comer, maybe an old head coach looking to get back in the game? Or what's – because we know this defense, I think they've been playing well this final stretch, but they were still struggling early. So I think it's a crucial hire for him. So what type of coach do you think Silverfield should maybe look at for DC?
I think a young up-and-comer who a lot of the young up-and-coming coaches they've got fiery attitudes, right? They've got, high energy guys. I think you need a fiery attitude, a high energy guy coming in, that defensive coordinator that can really galvanize the unit and get them excited about, learning the schemes or whatever. That's kind of who you want. Somebody who is just as excited to be there as some of those younger players, right? And so, one of the guys that I had on the list that I thought they should have went and grabbed is the Liberty defensive coordinator, but SMU wouldn't grab him up. And so, he's off the board now. But I do think you want somebody like that who showed some promise, who has a lot of potential, but is a younger guy. I think that would benefit that locker room and that coaching staff a lot.
Yeah, and I agree. So lastly, we know everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to end the year, on a win. So obviously a win would be a high note for the program, getting another bowl win, heading to National Signing Day in February. But it's just a bowl game, but what type of just a bowl game with no Calvin Austin as well. But what type of impact do you think a potential loss would be? And I'm not sure where the line is from Memphis, but I got to think they're maybe around a touchdown favorite or so. What do you think a loss could maybe kind of do, and what do you think the narrative would be if Memphis isn't able to come out on top?
I think this is, like you said, everybody wants to win a bowl game, but I think this is a huge bowl game for Memphis in the program, just because they're at that 6-6 mark. Everybody wants to talk about conference realignment, and although one season doesn't dictate one way or the other, they've had a level of standard here for a long time, and a loss would give you your first losing season since 2013, and a win will kind of keep that winning record streak going. So I think, that's basically the bottom line for them. How do you want to be remembered? If they win, even in a down year, they'll be remembered as the first team to win back-to-back bowl games in school history in consecutive seasons. If they lose, they'll be remembered as the first team with a losing record in 8 years. And so I think, this is the dictate of 5-6 years from now. How will this season be remembered? I think it all boils down to winning this Hawai'i Bowl.
Well, you heard them, man. There's a lot of line, even though it's just a bowl game. So Ryan Silverfield is going to look to build some positive momentum with a bowl win and presumably a DC hire coming up here soon. We'll keep y'all updated. Memphis basketball is supposed to return on Monday. Cross your fingers. We'll see what's happened. Thank y'all for joining us so much. We'll see y'all next week on the next episode of the Tigers Podcast.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.